Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is Trilbee and welcome to my latest vlog where I take on a topic that one of you folks has suggested. This week it is from my patron Dean Jones, and if you want to submit a topic you can support me on my Patreon or suggest some of them in the comment section below. That would be terrific. But Dean Jones asks, with Harrison Ford returning to the Star Wars franchise, temporarily, should he don the fedora and the whip to become Indiana Jones for the 5th time? Or alternatively, should the franchise be a soft reboot and cast somebody else in the title role? Now, just to start this video off with some appropriate context, I have seen all Indiana Jones movies. I just saw them in the wrong order when I was growing up. First I watched Temple of Doom on TV, then I watched Kingdom of the Crystal Skull in theatres, and then on DVD and Blu-ray I caught Raiders of the Lost Ark and The Last Crusade. Incidentally, Last Crusade is my favourite of the four. So when I first watched Kingdom of the Crystal Skull with very little baggage, with only a tangential understanding of the Indiana Jones franchise, I thought it was fun. I actually remember walking out of Kingdom of the Crystal Skull with my parents and my brother and just feeling so incredibly high and hyped up. How old was I? I was like 13, 14 when Kingdom of the Crystal Skull came out. I was kind of at the right age to appreciate it as a simple, fun, engaging blockbuster that kind of enthralled me and really got me energized. I really wanted to be like Indiana Jones and whip bad guys and swing across chasms and find archaeological stuff, and it was a fun time. Of course, with the benefit of hindsight and knowing more about the franchise after watching Raiders of the Lost Ark and The Last Crusade, I know that Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, while not a terrible movie, I think it's a solid blockbuster. It's decent. It's a bad Indiana Jones movie. But you don't need me to tell you that. The internet hates Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. If you just mention it, people will just pretend it doesn't exist at all. And Red Letter Media did a fantastic breakdown, I'll put that in the description below, of the Indiana Jones movie, talking about just how it is not an Indiana Jones movie, how it's lacking the grit, how it's lacking many of the staples that made the franchise so iconic in the first place. But make no mistake, the franchise still has a lot of brand value. This isn't like Terminator Genesis, where it got mauled by critics, but it made enough money to be kind of profitable so the franchise could continue. While Kingdom of the Crystal Skull was generally well received by critics, it also made a lot of money. It was one of the biggest hits in the year it came out. Okay, scratch that. It was the second most popular movie in the year it came out, 2008. It was second only to The Dark Knight. It made nearly $800 million. That proves that the name has some sort of staying power, regardless of the quality of the movie and the bad word of mouth that surrounded it. That means that a new Indiana Jones movie is definitely in the realm of possibility, and it is something that Steven Spielberg and Harrison Ford have been talking about for quite a while. While Steven Spielberg is adamant in interviews that he did not want to do Kingdom of the Crystal Skull and that George Lucas pushed him into doing it.
Then George came to me one day, I'll never forget this conversation, said, "You know, you might be right about this alien thing. Maybe we shouldn't do aliens. There's too much of that stuff around." I said, "George, I love you. That's the best news you've ever given me." He said, "Yeah, they're not aliens. They're kind of extra-dimensional." I said, "What?" So I said, fine.
He's come out recently saying that he wouldn't mind making another installment in the franchise, but that only Harrison Ford should do it. Now, does Harrison Ford want to do it? Well, yes he does, apparently. Earlier today I went on Twitter and Facebook and I asked you folks to try and find some sources and quotes of Harrison Ford saying that he would like to return to the franchise, and one of you actually sent a very good article from Entertainment Weekly that I shall link in the description below. Thank you very much, Lord_Graham on Twitter, for sending me that link. Oh yeah, I'd love to do another Indiana Jones movie, Harrison Ford says to Entertainment Weekly. A character that has a history and a potential kind of a rollicking good movie ride for the audience, Steven Spielberg as a director, what's not to like? That quote kind of implies that he'll only do it if Steven Spielberg does it, and while I will line up for anything that Steven Spielberg does, the BFG coming up this year is one of my most anticipated movies. Is he the right fit for this franchise now? As much as I love Steven Spielberg doing action, I would love to see him do new things and venture new paths. In fact, the Adventures of Tintin movie he did with Peter Jackson in 2011 felt like the next Indiana Jones movie. It felt like a family-friendly Indiana Jones movie. That is what Kingdom of the Crystal Skull should have been. That's such a terrific film. And while Harrison Ford hasn't said this directly, I think he's kind of implied in the past that he'll only do it if the script is there. He's been burnt before in Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, and he didn't want to return to Star Wars for quite a while, but once he read the script, everything was fine. I think that when Harrison Ford is passionate about a project, he will throw his 100% effort into it. He can be a terrific actor if he is engaging with the material. He was terrific in 42 in 2013. If it was up to me, he probably would have got nominated for Best Supporting Actor. He was so good in that film.
Echo a curse with a curse, and they'll hear only yours. Follow a blow with a blow, and they'll say the Negro lost his temper. Your enemy will be out in force, and you cannot meet him on his own low ground. We win with hitting, running, fielding, only that. We win if the world is convinced of two things: that you are a fine gentleman and a great baseball player.
And while I haven't seen Age of Adeline, I'm told he was really good in that as well, and he was pretty good in Ender's Game. It was just maybe another blockbuster paycheck to him, but he turned up on set and he tried. He made an effort, which is more than can be said of his appearances in, say, Anchorman 2, which is a movie I do like, but he really phoned it in there, and not to mention Paranoia. But not to delay the answer to Dean Jones's question anymore, should Harrison Ford return to the franchise? I think he should. I think he's got it left in him, and if he does return to the franchise, it's because he wants to do it, which means he will put effort into it, and it also means that the script must be good, or at least by his standards, it must be good enough. But if it was up to me, and I'm hardly a Hollywood executive, I'm just here in my cat-laden cupboard, if it was up to me, I'd kind of do what you suggested in your initial comments, Dean Jones. I would maybe do a soft reboot, and not only would I get a different actor, I'd maybe try and get the best of both worlds. I would get Harrison Ford and somebody else, like a Bradley Cooper or a Chris Pratt, or ideally somebody who does not have any sort of baggage, a brand new actor who can somehow embody Indiana Jones. And what you could do is that you could have a narrative in which Harrison Ford as Indiana Jones is much older and he's retired from adventuring, and he's telling one of his stories to maybe a child or one of his students. Maybe he's still a professor, he just doesn't go out in the field anymore, but he's talking to his students about an adventure that happened, and then you flash back to a younger Indiana Jones played by a different actor, and then future installments follow adventures with that actor. I think that would be a good transitional thing. It would get audiences invested and engaged with a brand new actor and make them more accepting of the idea, as this will be a sort of passing of the torch. And I also think if you got the right director, you could have a lot of fun with the transitions. You could have a lot of fun with maybe the younger and the older interplay. And I also think it would add a new dimension to the story. It's something that the Indiana Jones franchise hasn't really done before outside of the opening minutes of The Last Crusade. Many people have been suggesting that Indiana Jones could be like a James Bond character in which they have different actors playing throughout different iterations, but I think that's an unfair comparison. James Bond has been around for decades and decades, has been played by half a dozen actors who have been gradually weaning themselves in and out of the franchise, whereas Indiana Jones has only really known one constant for the best part of 4 decades. Yes, he's been played by other people before in TV spin-offs as well as the opening of The Last Crusade, like I mentioned earlier, but not to the extent where they have to fully embody the role for the whole theatrical runtime. Which is why a transitional movie could work really well. So who would I cast as Indiana Jones, a younger one? I don't know. There's that Anthony Gruber person who played younger Harrison Ford in The Age of Adeline, so there's precedence there, but I've not seen Age of Adeline, and I don't know if this kid is a good actor or not. I believe he's on one of the shortlists to play young Harrison Ford in the upcoming Star Wars Han Solo spin-off, but is he a good actor? And do we really want somebody who's just going to mimic Harrison Ford, or do we want somebody who can bring their own interpretation and their own flair to the character? I mean, if you did have a flashback-laden movie where an older Indiana Jones is talking about one of his past adventures to his students, then he could embellish the truth slightly. He could talk about himself as a different interpretation of himself. When you talk about yourself in the third person and talk about something you've done in your past or telling a story to a friend, you kind of maybe mischaracterize yourself. Maybe you make yourself come across as even worse than you actually were. Maybe you come across as even better than you actually were because you're the one telling the story. that means there's kind of room for leeway in regards to a new actor going for a different spin on this established character. But anyway, those are just my thoughts, but what are yours, folks? What do you think of the whole Indiana Jones scenario? Would you like to see another one? Would you like to see another one done by Steven Spielberg? Who would you cast as a new Indiana Jones? Or do you think Harrison Ford should just return to the franchise and go out on old adventuring and everything, even though he's, what is he, 70? And if any of you folks would like to submit a topic for me to talk about on this YouTube channel, then be sure to visit my Patreon in order to support me, and you get entered into the pledge in order to request vlog topics. And thanks to all of you on Patreon who really help to keep the lights on here at Trilbee Reviews and help to keep me living in this cupboard. I really do appreciate it. And even if you don't want to request a vlog, please check out my Patreon and you may be interested in other perks and rewards that I do have on the website. Thank you very much for listening, and I'll see you folks next time.
I said, what?